Hey, this is Eddie from Priority Bicycles, and I'm going to show you how to install a dropper seat post on your 600X. So the first step is to take off the seat and seat post that come on the bike. Assuming you're reusing the stock seat, you're just going to take a 5mm Allen key and just remove it from the top of the seat post. There you go. So I'm going to carefully unwrap the cable and housing. So just keep in mind, guys, that there's a lot of small parts that come with this, especially some really small bolts. So I recommend that you work in a clean area, keep everything in one place, and try and keep track of all these small parts, because you don't want to lose any of them. The trickiest step of this whole process is running the cable internally. And if you have access to bike shop tools, you have an internal routing kit. So I'll show you how to use that, and then I'll show you how to do a home method using a zip tie. So I'm going to use my Park internal routing kit, the IRS 1.2. So I'm going to use the line that has a magnet on one end and threads into the end of the housing on the other end, and I'm going to use the main magnet. So if you just feed this in here, then it'll kind of follow the magnet down as you feed it in. Comes out. Then you can just thread this end into the end of your housing. Just jam it in there nice and tight. And then just feed the housing in. You want to make sure that this isn't going to pop out inside the bike. So get that in there nice and tight. So just guide that through using the line, and then your housing just pops right out. Now let me show you the home method. So for the home method, we're just going to run the inner cable first and then catch that with a zip tie loop to pull it through the other side of the tube. So I'm running this so that the head of the cable is going to be on the top side. So I'm running the non-head of the cable down into the tube. I'm looking right into the internal routing port here, and I've fed the cable in, and I have a strong light here, so I can actually just see the cable moving around in there, and I know I have it in just about the right place. I've created a little loop with my zip tie here that I'm going to feed in. And I'm just going to aim for that. And this is tricky, so it might take you a couple of tries. Okay, so once you've looped the cable, you want to pull it back just enough so that you can pull the tip out of the port. And then you can just take your housing and feed the cable into the housing enough so it's safely in there. And then you can just feed your housing up through the bike and it'll follow the path of the cable through. There you go. So then step 2 of this is to feed this housing up into the seat tube itself. You want to make sure you have the seat post out of the way. So you don't want to have too much slack here so that it contacts the crank arm or the drivetrain. I'm going to try and tuck mine out of the way a little bit, just so it kind of perches up here on top of the gearbox. Now the next step is to cut the housing to length. So I'm going to reinsert some housing here, just to make sure we have enough on the lever side on the front of the bike. So the way we want to check that is to turn the bars and make sure there's enough slack in it so that it doesn't actually pull anything out. So that looks like it's just about the right length. So just kind of keep that in mind. And now, we're going to take the post, our actual dropper post, and you want to kind of have an idea of what the final seat height for your bike is. So based on the rigid post that we had on here before, you should have a sense of what seat post height you're going to use. So I'm installing the ferrules on the housing. And so running this particular dropper post requires you to cut the housing exactly to length and put the cable end on the cable before installing the lever. So get that in there, make sure there's no slack. And now I'm just going to check how much. I'm going to check where the end of my cable needs to be, more or less, to fit into the slot on the dropper post. So looks like we've got pretty much 2 centimeters. All right, so I'm going to run the cable through our cable end here, and then just going to thread in this locking bolt, tension bolt, hold it in place, and I'm just going to snug that up. I'm just going to double check that there's enough slack in there to reach where we need it to reach. That looks fine. We can make up for additional slack at the lever as well because there's a barrel adjuster there, so a little extra is okay. Now I'm just going to cut off the excess cable. Now I'm just going to fit the cable end in the little carrier here in the dropper post. Get that in place, and now I'm ready to feed this back in. So I'm just going to take the slack up as it's coming in and just feed that housing back into the bike, basically at my saddle height. You don't want to over tighten this quick release because if it's too tight, the dropper post won't drop. Now we can just go back and just attach our lever here on the left side, inside of the brake lever clamp. So you just want this to be within easy reach of your thumb, but not so close that you accidentally bump it. So you want to use this barrel adjuster here to pick up, if it feels like there's a lot of slack here in the cable, just turn that out a bit so the lever feels nice and tight to the touch. It should make the dropper a little bit more reactive, and you don't want that extra play. And now you can reinstall your saddle. There we go. And then just get the angle you want on there. And you're good to go. If you have any questions, comment below or reach out. We're happy to help.